And the Specialized saddle will be the last saddle you'll ever need to buy, because our patented adjustable fit system lets you precisely fit your horse or use the same saddle on different horses you may get in the future. Don't forget to check out our website and try a Specialized saddle. You'll be glad you did.
Speaking of Horses is made possible by Equessentials Horse Care Products, for products developed by a horse person, for horse people, and horse use. Please check out Equessentials Horse Products. They have all the products you need to perfectly care for your horse's coat and physical appearance and well-being. Equessentials. Welcome to Speaking of Horses, or should we say this trip, Speaking of Horses and Mules. We are standing in front of one of the beautiful sculptures and statues on the Lucky 3 Ranch, and that is Meredith Hodges, who has been training mules to some fantastic things for many years. Our guest for this entire show is going to be Meredith and all the things that are happening right here at the ranch. So sit back on Speaking of Horses and enjoy our trip through the world of mules and donkeys. Well, welcome to Speaking of Horses this morning, and we should say Speaking of Horses and Mules. It's a special, and donkeys too. It is a special version, and I'm really happy to have Meredith Hodges as a guest. So Meredith, welcome, and real quickly tell us a quick synopsis about what you're doing here in Loveland, Colorado at your ranch.
Well, here in Loveland, Colorado, I have actually gone through a large gamut of training and breeding mules and showing and becoming a judge and developing a correspondence training program, which has evolved this ranch has evolved from a 10-acre little farm into a 127.5-acre farm. We've got 112 acres in hay. We have a sculpture park now where we have 13 outdoor full-size bronzes of mules and donkeys. I have commissioned an artist to immortalize my champions out here. So now it took about 3 years, but we have kind of evolved into the Loveland Long Ears Museum and Sculpture Park at Lucky 3 Ranch. So we now have a lot of groups that come in here, school groups, senior groups, 4-H, FFA, and they come and arrange a tour, and we have as few as 1 or 2 up to about 50 people at a time that come here to see these mules and donkeys that I have trained over the years, and to talk with us about our techniques and how we got to where we are. And with the correspondence training program, that was my first project in 1998, because I didn't really want to go on the road and do clinics. I felt that when I was going to clinics and learning all this stuff, I was one of 20 people and didn't get a lot of personal attention. I found out that the best that the clinician could give you in the course of a weekend, 4 days or whatever, was highlights. And then you would get home and start to practice this stuff and find out how many holes there were in the training and try to catch up with one of those people and ask them a question. It's impossible. So I decided to do a video series as a correspondence training course, and I really didn't know if it was going to work or not, because I knew I would have to answer questions on the phone or in letters, and that would really be a challenge. That has been in effect now since 1998, and that would be, 12 years now. And I have not had one case that I haven't been able to talk people through it. I think the other part of that is also important for people to realize that you really do need to train your own animal yourself, and I think your trainer needs to be your guide, because well, to put it quite simply, you wouldn't ask someone to go out and make a friend for you, would you? They can't become your friend unless you are engaged and you are part of the process. And so the way that I've set this up has enabled that, and I've had people who are in wheelchairs who are training their own animals, which is phenomenal, and they told me they were doing this. I didn't, originally think that this was going to be a possibility, but I did have a lot of people get in touch with me that had a horse or whatever and wanted to get involved, and there are therapeutic riding programs all over, but a lot of people people can't afford them, but they might have a horse. And this is a very therapeutic kind of thing to do. So it was my pleasure to help facilitate this. And I also support a farm that's 2 miles away here called Hearts and Horses Therapeutic Riding Program. And I've donated 2 mules over there. They wanted to know if mules are good enough for this too. I said, well, if you treat them right, of course, they'll work for you. They will. And the mules are actually becoming the most popular animals over there because they are so cooperative and they are so solid. But the mules have kind of taught me that, you can't be in a hurry when you're training. You need to be engaged in the process. You have to appreciate and be grateful for the little victories along the way, and really find fun in every stage of the training and not think of training as a means to get to riding or driving, because there is so much joy in just being with them every day. And the mules they find it absolutely necessary to humiliate you if you get too full of yourself or in too much of a hurry. So, this is what they have really taught me.
Well, I have to interject here. You're talking about, take the little victories and make the small steps. I was interviewing a few years ago in North Carolina at a horse expo. There was a dressage clinician. The name escapes me right now, but was here from Europe. And we had a little round table going, and the first thing he said was, all of you Americans, you have to understand something. Dressage is a long process, and I cannot tell you how to get there in 2 years because you want it now, and it's not going to happen now.
That's absolutely correct. And I had Colonel Podolsky's picture above my bed from the time I was 2 years old, and I have always revered dressage because it is exactly that. They have always understood that it takes time to condition muscles, it takes time to learn and grow, and the horses are no different from us that way, and it cannot be hurried.
Matter of fact, sometimes you go back to the old saying that life is not necessarily reaching the goal, it's the journey.
It most definitely is the journey, and I'll tell you what, these mules will, if you don't think you're going to appreciate what the little victories are along the way, you just simply won't have any with a mule, because you will be stuck in the middle of the arena and you either will not be going anywhere or the mule will be running around completely out of control.
However, there was a gentleman in North Carolina also that his name is James Lamb, and he has a mule named Rocky.
Yes.
Are you familiar with him?
James Lamb, yes.
All right. He won. We do a little thing at horse expos around called Search for America's Ultimate Horse Idol. In North Carolina a few years ago, James Lamb on Rocky won. We should call it the Equine Idol, but he won that on Rocky because what a phenomenal mule he has.
Absolutely true, and that's happening all over the country. These people with mules are being allowed into the horse shows, and people will poo-poo them when they come on the grounds, and some of them even are kind of afraid of them, and I think their horses start getting jittery because they're jittery and they're apprehensive about it. But we are finding that our mules are beating the horses, which makes absolute sense when you think about how you get a mule. You get a mule by breeding a male donkey with his strength and intelligence to a good mare of any breed, and you select the mare according to the activities that breed is noted for. So what you have is an animal coming out of whatever horse with the addition of that strength and intelligence of the jack, so it's always going to be better than the horse it came out of.
Visiting with you is just wonderful. I could do this all day. Now, we're going to take a tour of the farm. We are seated in your tack room, and you said every one of these every mule has its own bridle, tack, and we're going to take a tour of the place.
And let me also say that these mules, I'm a firm believer, if you can't do it in a snaffle bit, you haven't done your homework with the groundwork, because every one of my mules is very, very light in the bridle and responsive to the cues, but it's because we took the journey, took took the time to do it right, and having them with their own bridles like this makes it so much more efficient to do things when everything's organized and kept clean and up to snuff and everything. It just, when you've got 21 mules to work by yourself like I do, you need to be able to streamline things, and so when they have their own bridles and everything, I can work as many as 10, 12 mules in a round pen all at once to keep them fit, so that I don't feel like I have to ride them every day. And I find that that's really all they really need, because I have found that every disobedience that I have ever encountered with an equine was due to a loss of balance, which means they were not conditioned properly for what they were being asked to do. And some of these animals, even today, are older animals. They are trained as well as most people's broke animals, but I very rarely get a chance to ride all of them. Some of them only have about 10, 12 rides on them, and they're 13 years old. But they are better broke than most people's really broke animals because I paid attention to their conditioning.
Absolutely. The whole thing comes down to paying attention to your horse or your mule or your donkey and working with them every day. You'll get there. As long as you pay attention to them every day. You can't drag them out of the pasture once a month and expect them to perform.
No, and actually every day is not necessary, but what is necessary is getting that groundwork done when they're first starting out, and that's when you have to put a lot of time into it. Now I have 21 mules. I've produced 49 shows for television. I've got 5 training books for adult training. I've got 5 children's books that we've developed, Jasper the Story of a Mule, so that we could address kids coming up, because they always heard that mules were stubborn and everything, and all the books that they had at a younger age were all done around horses, and there were no mule books out there, and that's why we did the thing for the kids, so that they get started with mules on the right foot and not get sucked into these battles with them. But I have since learned that once I taught each mule singularly with the groundwork, all the way from leading training to lunging to ground driving and mounting, after they got that down really, really solid, then in order to maintain them for riding, all I have to do is lunge them and keep them fit, because they know the cues and everything, and that's really the simple part of it. The harder part of it is keeping them fit enough to perform. And like I said, now I can do group lessons because at the beginning I spent enough time on that. And there are times I don't get out to see my mules for a whole week, but the one thing that I do is I make sure that they are all groomed once a week and have their haircuts and everything. And I always do things exactly the same way. When I never chase anybody, and you'll see when we go to the barn, they're all very polite little characters, and they come to the door and they go, "What do you want, Mom?" And if I want the halter on, I just grab the halter and they stick their noses right in and we go, and never have to chase anybody. But this is a repetition at the beginning stages, and then when I have to go away and do something else, they know how they're supposed to be, and they're the same as when I left when I come back.
And that's what it's all about. So why don't we go take a tour of this is a great facility you got here with the shadow of the mountains here in north of Denver, Loveland, Colorado, the mountains to the background. Let's go take a tour.
All right, you got it. Okay, who we're meeting here is Lucky 3 Sundowner. And as I was saying, these animals have all been taught not to go anywhere unless they're invited. So they will come up to the door just like I said here. They're paid well with their crimped oats. They're fed well. I do not use horse feeds, by the way, on these animals. It will cause hypertension in donkeys and mules and in most horses as well. And if you want your animal to perform well, they need to be paid well. And I found that a pat on the head really wasn't good enough for these mules. Shake a hand, make a friend? Nope. Atta boy. Now this guy here that you see is 30 years old. And he's a half-brother to our sire, Little Jack Horner. Little Jack Horner was out of a donkey. This one was out of a mare. And this was the first mule ever to reach 4th level dressage back in 1993. And we're very proud of him, and I still ride him today. He's just as fit as he could ever be. And because we took the time with his conditioning, he was also a 1984 world champion reining mule. But even after all of these activities and everything, there's not a hint of arthritis or anything, and he's used as a ranch mule now. and he just loves going out for a little ride now and again. Good boy.
Go.
This mule here is maybe CT. She appears to be busy with her food at the moment. Come here. Come here. Come on over here. Come here. Now let me have your foot. That's a good girl. Maybe CT was a mule that I have competed and has won over 200 championship titles in every event, including driving. And her last accomplishment was to beat 56 horses in the 3-day event across dressage, stadium jumping, and cross country at the Abbey Ranch Horse Trials. So we're very, very proud of her, and she is 28 years old. Now, these mules live longer than horses when they're well cared for. So I think the oldest mule I ever saw was 52 years old. So when they're cared for properly, they can live a long time. So there's no reason to be in a hurry. This is little Jack Horner. He's 30 years old, and he is the sire supreme of most of the Lucky 3 mules. He also has 3 grandsons. One of them died, Lucky 3 Excalibur, but we still have 2 of them out there, Lucky 3 Excelsior and Lucky 3 Blue Baron, that are siring more mules to date. Little Jack Horner's a little old to be doing anything like that now, but he was also the only formal jumping donkey in the world. He's 13 hands, and when he jumped 4 feet with me on his back. He also did reining patterns with flying lead changes. He slid 15 feet and did spins, and he made it to second level dressage, so he's quite an athletic man. Franklin is 20 years old, is 34, pardon me. Franklin's 34, but we got him at 20 so that we could see if a 20-year-old could be reconditioned. This little mule had a ewe-neck on him. Come here. Good boy. He had a ewe-neck that was really, really severe, but we have managed to straighten it out, and he's doing quite well at 34 years old. And we're very proud of him. He's still used for driving, and we have a miniature horse that we use as a partner with him as a team.
Speaking of Horses is also made possible through the courtesy of Equine Technologies. For all of your hoof treatment, hoof care, and hoof-related infectious problems, please contact Equine Technologies. Well, now we've talked with Meredith here in her beautiful tack room. We're going to turn this over to Meredith, and we're going to let her tell you a little bit about the training techniques she uses right in front of all of the harness, all the bridles in this beautiful tack room. So we turn it over to Meredith right now.
Okay, in 1973, I began working with mules at my mother's mule ranch in Healdsburg, California. It was the Windy Valley Mule Ranch, and my mother and her husband had gone around the country and picked out some of the best jacks and the best mares, because mules had been bred from mares that were culled from the breeding herds before. So the mules that you saw were really, really coarse. And what we wanted to do, since there was a decline in the numbers of mules in this country, was to prove that mules would still have use in modern America. So we got the best mares we could find and the best jacks we could find, and we bred them. And we had 60 head of brood mares, 7 jacks, and 8 genets out on a 1,000-acre ranch in Healdsburg, California. We took in mares from outside and bred with AI. And we did this for a number of years until 1979, when my mother dispersed the ranch. And at that time, I took some of the stock and moved out here to Colorado and started my own ranch, more on a smaller scale out here. So basically, we were responsible for breeding the first, quote, show mules in the country. We wanted to prove that mules were as capable of horses in all the equine activities that horses were doing. And so I started out in gymkhana and was running barrels and poles and keyhole with my mules, and they did really well. We beat the horses in the rodeos. Then we went on to Western events, Western judged events, reining, Western riding, trail, and all of those things. And the mules were proven quite competent in those events as well. And then I moved on to English events, and this is over a course of a lot of years, and did English judged events and kept up the Western. And then I got into dressage, and dressage has always been fascinating to me. I've watched the history, and it seemed to make the most sense to me because it really addresses the animal's physical, mental, and emotional conditioning on a number of levels. And when I got into dressage, it started putting the picture together for me, as well as working with mules who really don't take kindly to any kind of forceful training. It became clear to me that the best course of training for a mule was to raise them as you would a child, with all of these different things in mind: their physical conditioning, their mental stability, and their emotional wellness. And so that's when I started doing my training programs. It was by 1998. I had been doing dressage for about 2 years, and I put together my correspondence video training course. And what it basically is I found the common threads that ran through all those different events, and what you did that was most common through all of those things for the animals themselves that would get the best results. And I found that it really does. It's not so, with mules, you can't do anything in a big hurry. If you do, they become confused, and they don't know what you want, and if you get mad at them, then the whole thing escalates into a big fight. Whereas if you take the time to spend enough time at each level of training, like leading training should take a whole year, but a lot of people just do it for a couple of weeks and they go, well, he's good, he's following me, or whatever. But the mules have taught me that it's a lot more than that. What you really need to do is take a look at your animal and decide what they need at any given stage. And what I've found that they really, really need is they need, at the leading stage, it's not just a matter of teaching them to follow you. What's more important is how is their body getting conditioned while you're doing all these things. So when we lead train these mules, what we do is we teach them to follow at the shoulder. I have the lead line held in my left hand, because I found that when you hold in your hand underneath their chin with your right hand, every step that you take, you interfere with their balance. And you have to realize that every step that these guys take is strengthening muscle. And when you're doing leading training, the muscles that are being conditioned are the ones that are closest to the bone. They're holding up those bony columns. And none of us are born with good posture and good muscle development. So this is something that we need to keep in our mind as we're going through all these different stages of training with our animals, because if they are conditioned properly in different stages, and you address the muscles at what we call the core, or right there closest to the bone, you get those good and solid, then later on when you start asking more difficult things, they'll be able to do it. The mules have taught me that when you ask them to do something that they're not physically capable of doing is when you get that disobedience. And a lot of people think that, yeah, okay, well, I'm leading the animal, and he's supposed to do this, and I got to do this. But the fact of the matter is, if you want your mule to be in good, or your horse to be in good posture and develop those muscles properly, then you have to be in good posture while you're doing these exercises with your animal, such that when he steps forward with the right foot, your right foot goes forward. That you don't take a step that's beyond his, a larger stride than his, or a smaller stride. You mimic each other because they watch you. And when you're really meticulous about how you're walking and how you're stopping and how you back up, and if you have them square up every single time they stop, and you practice these what's called showmanship leading techniques from the time you get them from the pen or the barn till the time you put them away, then this constant repetition builds their muscles properly over a well postured frame, and you're strengthening that core. And the way that you know that you're ready to move on to the next stage is you do all of the flat work exercises on the lead line. And when you can throw the lead rope over their neck and they will follow you at the shoulder and do everything without you touching them, then you're ready to go ahead and do lead line training over obstacles. And what this does is you've cultivated strength and balance at this flat work stage. But when you get to the obstacles, the first order of business would be to cultivate confidence and a curiosity for the obstacles, so that when they see something, they're not going to be afraid of it. They're going to look at it and they're going to look to you as the leader, and you go up to the obstacle and you encourage them to come to it, and you reward them. And they need to be rewarded with a good reward, and with equines, it's crimped oats. And so we get them to go over these obstacles first, but then we want to cultivate their coordination and add coordination to this strength and balance. So once they're really confident about going over these obstacles, then what we do is, say it's the bridge, we'll come up to the bridge, have them stop and square up before the bridge, then take a step forward, put 2 front feet on the bridge, leave the back feet off, square up, get on the bridge with all 4 feet, square up, go off the bridge on the other side, put 2 front feet on the ground, and leave the 2 hind quarters on the bridge. And this is, or the 2 hind feet on the bridge. And this is when you see the loss of balance, because what will happen is that the behind feet will just pass the front feet the first time going off the bridge, because they do, in fact, not have really good strength and balance at that point in time.
Well, Meredith, now we've listened to some of your training tips. We've toured the barn. Through the course of the show, you're seeing some of the beautiful statues, the sculptures you were talking about earlier around the place. But there's one other thing that's near and dear to your heart and to a lot of kids' hearts and to mine, because, you know, you always have to have something to bring the next generation in, just like you talked about. And those things are not just putting them on a mule or a horse or a donkey or whatever. It's getting them started learning about them before they get to the next step. And you're Jasper. I see you're holding Jasper Goes to Bishop. So tell us a little bit about Jasper and how you got this program off the ground.
Well, I started, like I said, finished the training course for adults, and I thought, like you, the next generation has to know about mules. And so we started with Jasper, the Story of a Mule, which is the largest book and the first one in the series that introduces all the characters. And in the books, we have tried to tell them a little bit about training, and even give them the morals and ethics that go along with the training of these animals, so that when they go out there with the animals, they have the right attitude. And attitude is really, really important if you don't want to get hurt. That's what you got to do. So these are nice stories about mules for kids that are interested in animals. But like I said, they have life lessons all throughout each of these stories, and each of these stories has a point to it and addresses all these different moral issues that they're going to have to grow up with.
And I see here, this is a coloring book, actually. Jasper Goes to Bishop.
Yes.
So you have the coloring book.
Coloring book. We've got
DVDs.
DVD. This is Jasper Goes to Bishop DVD. This DVD down here is Jasper, the Story of a Mule. It was taken from the first book in the series. And the books are also holiday specials. We have Jasper, a Christmas Caper, that is part 2 in the series, Jasper, a Precious Valentine, Jasper, a Fabulous Fourth, and Jasper, a Turkey Tale. And now we're in the process of making DVDs for these sequels. And we will find time on television again for these sequels to premiere on TV as well.
Well, if people need to contact you now about Jasper or about your training program or the like, how do they get a hold of you?
They can call our 1-800 number at 1-800-816-7566, or you can go to one of our 2 websites at www.lucky3ranch.com or www.jasperthemule.com.
Fantastic. And Meredith, it has really been my pleasure to have you on Speaking of Horses and Mules, this program. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure to be here.
And we've really enjoyed your ranch as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of Horses is made possible through the support and courtesy of Windmill Halters. Top quality halters, leads, collars, and the like for all of your needs and they can all be monogrammed specifically to meet the name of the horse or dog or the like that you have. Here we see some examples of wonderful monogramming. MonogramHorsehalters.com is the website. You can order online, even specialty fan hangers, and you can have that special horse chair monogrammed just for you. Thank you to Windmill Halters, supporting Speaking of Horses.